Good evening to the audience, and I'm excited to have three brand new authors with us this evening. They are all very different authors, and I was very excited when I was told that I'm going to interview them. Three different types of writing, three different schools of writing, and I read little excerpts from all of their work. Three very different styles of writing as well. Please welcome them as I talk them through their journey of becoming a published writer. Welcome Angshu, welcome Nitya, welcome Divya.
Thank you.
Okay, so as we start, I would like to hear a little bit on, the inspiration of writing and how it comes to each of you. To begin with, I want to talk to you, Nitya, about when did you start writing and where do you get the inspiration of your ideas? Before you start answering though, just talk to us a little bit about your book and tell us when it got published and how we can get it.
Thank you, Anumita, and thank you all of you for being here and being part of this session. My book, What the Eye See, is a collection of 7 dark stories. It's a bit different from the normal genre, what you see in the market. So it's 7 dark stories. Now, coming back to your question. So writing is something that I started doing from a very young age because I loved writing. So it was more of like a passion. I used to express more when I was writing than when I was talking. So for me, it was a release also. Okay, and on top of that, I used to love storytelling also. Okay, so from the time like when I was a kid, I used to do storytelling to my friends, and it continued even when I went to my college, and in between I dropped it because of time restraint and because other things took priority. Yeah. But then now I'm back to it, and so I started writing, and I enjoy it. So if you ask me what's my inspiration, it's more of like I don't have a particular inspiration. I love storytelling. I love writing. So that is what makes me write. And yeah, that's
So
about
it's the joy of writing, really.
the joy of writing, the love of expressing.
Sure.
Yeah,
And
stories.
you've always been writing. Is that something that the others on the panel concur with? That whether or not you got published now, you've always been writing.
Yeah, but mostly rubbish earlier, but yeah, always been writing is true.
I think I've written pretty sporadically. I used to write a lot when I was a kid, so because I was very big on extracurriculars in general. So in school, I did a lot of these essay competitions, short story competitions. Fancied myself as even being able to write poetry, though I don't think I'm good at it. But later on, not so much. I used to blog sporadically, and I've had large portions of time where I've kept diaries and just journaled a lot. So I often used to think that I would potentially never write. I read a lot, and I had a very high bar for writing for myself. So I kind of stumbled into writing pretty much organically. Otherwise, I always thought I would be that person who keep reading, but potentially wouldn't write.
Interesting. What Anshu is now telling you is that he used to write songs. Apparently, he thought they were bullshit. Sorry, pardon my French, but I'm sure they'll be released someday. Divya, your book is one of the most interesting topics that I've seen in a long time. Talk to us a little bit about the book and how did you stumble on the idea?
Sure. So my book is called Dare Eat That, and it's basically a guide to eating bizarre food from around the world. So everything from like insect carts in Southeast Asia to weird meat to pufferfish, which could potentially kill you. So the idea actually was pretty easy for me. Much before I ever thought of writing, my husband actually came up with this brilliant plan when he decided to go around the world eating weird food. Actually, it wasn't even weird food. He decided he would be on a quest to eat every species that he could find. So that's how it started. And as he would go around doing that, so wherever he traveled he would keep eating things, and I realized the easiest way to get him to travel would be to just tell him that you could find your next big species there. And he even had this chart. So because he's a little bit of a scientific-minded person, it started with vertebrates, invertebrates, and then went down the whole scientific classification. This giant chart that was getting made. And in one of our trips, a friend of mine actually just said this. He was like, you know what, you guys should just put this on Kickstarter. It's really cool. Put it on Kickstarter. Maybe someone will pay for your travel, and then you don't have to spend the money on traveling. Because I would read, then started joking and telling my husband that you should write a book. He never got around to it, so at the best opportunity I found, I wrote it instead. So now he gets to be the hero instead of being the person who actually wrote it. But the idea for me was, it was right there in my own home. I didn't have to do anything about it.
That's amazing. Also, when I was speaking with Divya, I was joking that should he be the co-author as well, since he's done quite a bit of the work. She stressed on the word hero so much. I'm sensing there's a bigger role he's playing in the book. One of the things that a lot of us who want to be writers, who want to sit where you are sitting today, we struggle with is what I sometimes call the defense mechanism, is that we have a day job and we work all day and we commute 4 hours a day in Bangalore. How do you even get time to be an author? So Angshu, talk to us a little bit about how you balanced a day job as a computer programmer and still found time to write a novel.
So, first of all, I wouldn't even be able to dream of doing this before my kids were a little grown up. But the first method that I really tried was, taking 2, 3, 4 weeks off work, go off and write, and come back and, work at being a computer programmer for 4 or 5 months, and then go off again. Well, the first time I did this, I was, thrilled because I got 40,000 words down. I thought, oh wow, so I just have to do this thrice more and I'll be done. The sad thing is that the second time I went, the stuff that I'd written the first time around, that didn't make sense anymore. So I had to go and throw it all away. So I thought that, okay, no, this is not sustainable, this is not going to work. So I tried to figure out, okay, when do I have time? So after I got back from work, spend time with kids, etc., etc. And after that, I'm too sleepy. So the only time I really had was in the morning. So I sort of moved my, waking up time to 3 hours before what it used to be. So I would wake up at 6:30 normally. I made that 3:30. Okay, so for the first 2 weeks or so, I was just a zombie. I was just sitting there and listening to music, not able to do anything. But after that, I was able to actually wake up without the alarm every day at 3:30. And from 3:30 to 6:30, I would write. And I did this for, I think, 4 years on the run. And yeah, so that is what ultimately helped finish this book, because going off to the Himalayas every 4 months, that doesn't really work.
This is so interesting because I was also asking Vinita backstage, Vinita Nangya, about how do I take this feeling that I have that I am a great author to becoming a real author. And she said, put the pen to the paper. So a lot of what we don't get is, there's a process of setting time aside and having the discipline of actually writing the book, even after the brilliance of the idea has struck you. So thank you for sharing that story. Moving on a little bit more about, the craft of writing and how it comes to you. I wanted to talk to you, Divya, about, so from where, your friend suggested the Kickstarter project and you got this idea, to the finished product, that is, the book that got published. What was the process that you went through? And specifically, since it's non-fiction, did you have to do, what time of research, what kind of writing methods did you use to get there?
Sure. So initially when I started, I personally, when I read travel books or even food books for that matter, right? The ones which are similar to this would be stuff like books by maybe Anthony Bourdain or Andrew Zimmern, all of these chefs who go around the world. So I fancied myself as someone who could write something similar. So I wrote it very much like a travelogue. I blogged a little about some of these places. So I wrote it completely in that style. And when I first took it to the editor who expressed interest, she looked at me and she said, this won't work. And I was like, why won't it work? And she pushed me pretty hard. She said, you know what, this is written memoir style. And I think she pretty much brought me down to earth with what she said next, where she said, you're not famous, nobody cares, you've never been on TV, why should they read your memoir? And then I tried convincing her. I said, no, there's this other book I've read, and this person wrote in this style. And she said, yeah, she had, at one point in time, Time magazine called her one of the top 100 bloggers in the world. You blogged and how many people read it? So, and then she gave me this idea that it should potentially be more of a guide. So, when she said that, I said, okay, if it has to be a travel guide, how do I organize it? What do I do? And research for me initially was not too hard because these were all places we had been to. So I did have background. I'm one of those travelers who has extensive spreadsheets, and I do a lot of I want to go see this historical thing and that and the other. So I had a lot of that information. And again, while traveling, because my husband is the kind of person who doesn't just go and eat. He actually asks people, finds out what's the delicacy. So there were a lot of really interesting stories that were already there in terms of why those people started eating what they ate and so on. A lot of it comes from just a lot of tragedy in the history of the place, where people have started picking up and going to eat whatever they could eat because they were starving, and a lot of the stories are like that. So I had all of that already. So the first shot I took at it, I was like, let me try and organize it around what he actually calls his rules of trying to find these kinds of, like, how to open up your mind to eat bizarre food. And that's how I started. I went about, I organized it in that manner. So it was set up into sections which were about rules. So rules like, find something that's closest to the source. So don't eat stuff which has been moved around the planet. Not just from sustainability, but from the way that it's prepared, and therefore the taste and all of that you get. So those kinds of rules, I had 4 sections with rules. Again, I went back to her after this rewrite. By the way, all of this was happening where there was no contract, so I was just doing it out of my own interest. And this time she said, it's interesting, but it's still not tying well enough. And then she kept pushing me on this concept of it has to be a guide, it has to be a guide. And that's when I said, okay, now I'm going to write it by region, so by country or city that we went to. So I reorganized it like that, and when I reorganized it like that, I also started thinking, I said, if this truly has to be a guide for someone who picks it up and says, hey, I want to go out there and in the next place that I visit, I want to eat the most bizarre things there, what are the other things that they would find interesting? So that's when I came back and said, okay, let's put in charts that talk about the price of the thing. Let's put charts on, we made these maps to say, okay, this is the map of the place. These are all of the famous places in this city that you're already going to see. But if you go down this road and go into this cut over here, you're going to find this small stall that sells maybe the best ant eggs, or if you go somewhere else, you're going to find some shrimp eggs or whatever. So then there were the maps that came in. Along with the pricing, we also thought it would be fun to rate it on taste and fear factor. And well, spoiler alert for those of you who haven't read it, I didn't eat most of this stuff. I'm not the bizarre food eater. So therefore, the research meant sitting with my husband and making him recollect what each thing tasted, asking him to rate it on a scale of 1 to 5, and then asking him, okay, now if somebody in India is reading this, what's the closest? And I think it's a comparison, and that's why you have things like, this tastes like bhujia and this tastes like grapes and stuff that you would have eaten. Because I think the biggest thing for me is if you read a Bourdain or you read Zimmern, they tell you what it tastes like, but a lot of what they're going to tell you it tastes like is probably stuff that you've also not eaten. And they're thinking of it from a chef's point of view, right? This is like a common person without that level of a refined palate who knows nothing about the cooking, but does know what they like. And if you like bhujia, then yeah, there's going to be a certain variety of insect that you probably like. You probably like grasshoppers.
So interesting. You now know why she calls him the hero. But also it's so interesting to see how a non-fiction book can completely change in perspective once you start actually thrashing it out and have the flesh on the idea. Moving from non-fiction to fiction, right, where the primary research is not quite so close, and you're observing life and sort of reflecting back in your work. Nitya, where do you uh, how do you develop your ideas into stories? What is your process of developing a character in a small frame of short fiction?
Okay. So, so like how you said, it's a short frame. Okay. So one of the things that I understood while writing a short story is that it's the most difficult thing because you have to be effective within a short framework. Okay. So you have to tell a story at the same time you have to get the attention of the reader. At the same time, you should leave it on their mind. Yeah. So doing that with a short story, I felt it was a bit difficult. Okay. So coming back to your question about the inspiration. Now, like how I said, my book is mostly, it's not the the normal day-to-day thing. It is more of like the dark side. Why I wrote that, I found it more interesting to write that. Okay, so that's why I wrote it. Now, coming back to your question once again, so my inspiration is mostly like there's not an inspiration to write. It's more of like, actually, it's like I have experiences in my life. Okay, not dark experiences, okay, like more of like normal experiences and all. And then I take it, and when I'm writing it, if something interests me, I kind of try to twist it, okay? Or like how one of the famous authors said, you add a question, a what if question to it. Okay, so one of the things that I'll give you an example is like one of the stories which I wrote in my book, which is called the Angel Numbers. Okay, so now this is concentrated about the fact that there are numbers which you see on your phone or on your digital clock or something where you see twin numbers like 222 or 333 or whatever, or 1111 or something like that. Okay, so it once happened like when I was working and one of my colleagues, so I was in sales and marketing, so you have your targets and everything. So one fine day I see her looking at her phone and smiling. So, and I ask her like, why are you smiling? Did you get a new order? No, I have been seeing the angel numbers. I've been seeing it for quite some time now. That means something good is going to happen because the angels are supposedly sending you a message. So that is quite interesting. I was very dumbfounded hearing it, but it was quite interesting also. So, she totally believed in it, and she had a very good order come in after that. And it was not a hard work, it was an angel number. So, yeah. So what I did was, what if the angels want to teach you a lesson, Okay, so that is what I did. So I just, and what if angels means, now there is a fallen angel also. What if he wants to teach you a lesson or he wants to send you a message? So this is what I applied to it, and that is how I wrote this particular story. So then another story I will take, there's a story called as The Game, okay. Now, this is something based on a story that takes place on the highway, okay. So same thing happened to me. In the story, the main person, the character, he loses his way, and then he comes across a stranger on the road, and the stranger doesn't have very good intentions, okay. So now what happened to me was the same. It was again at work. I was going for a meeting and coming back with my boss, and we were on the highway like this. We took a wrong turn, and it was in Dubai. Usually in Dubai you don't lose your way, but that particular day we lost our way and we couldn't find an exit for a very long time. It just kept on extending, the road kept on extending, it became darker, and there was more desert on either side, so it was kind of like a bit scary. Yeah. So again, I just and we met a person on the road, and we asked him the way, and he showed us the way. Okay. So again, so I thought like, what if that person had sinister intentions on his mind? Now, and I just added one person. There is no one accompanying the person also. So yeah, but anyways, when you read the book, you'll understand that what you think is not what you see in the book also. It's a totally different story. So in that way, it's again different. So this is what I did. I put my twists and turns into it because I just want to keep the attention of the reader. I just want to make sure that they enjoy. So this is what I feel I like doing and writing. So that's how I write my books. So developing a character or anything within short stories, it's a bit difficult because you cannot develop the entire character. But if you do also, that is a very good thing because in this many limited number of words, if you can develop a character, and you can see the story, keep the interest now. That's something big. So this is what I feel.
Very interesting. As a personal fan, I'm a big fan of the Noya style of writing, and your stories are something that I'm looking forward to reading. It's very interesting to see. So essentially, what you're saying is that you experience life, and then you impose the question, what if it was a darker twist that this moment took? That's such an amazing way to put it. Anshu, when I was talking with you, I was also trying to understand how you develop your ideas, and you talked to me a little bit about how the characters speak with you. It will be amazing to hear that story from you.
Yeah, so my novel is actually about a boy who's like 5 and then he's 15. So these are the ages through which he grows in the course of the novel. And so initially there was just the boy, okay. So I didn't know much about who else is in his life. Then I figured, okay, he has a father and not a mother. Then I figured, okay, who else could be in his life? And then so it sort of each aspect of this person's character started forming over. It probably took about a year to actually figure out, okay, so these are the things about the boy that's going to be in the book. And so that's basically
And
how
when you start, do you already have the arc of the story in your head, or do you let the characters lead you?
No, so for example, when there's this boy, and then afterwards there is his father. So I've tried to understand, okay, so if the father is like this and the boy is like this, what is the father likely to say to the boy? And what is the boy likely to do as a result of that? And then he is in school, and there are some kids who bully him. So how is he, okay, now I know all these things about this boy. So how is he going to, react to that bullying? So all of this actually keeps forming as the story goes. I mean, I don't, at least in this particular case, I didn't have the story arc down at all. In fact, I didn't know whether the character was going to live or die by the end of the story.
This was very exciting for me to know, because personally as a writer, I like to have the arcs completely spelled out, and I like to have a structure ready and a blueprint. And I was talking to a fellow author who also sort of has my style, and to talk to this panel, and I discovered that there are all of your styles are mildly different from each other, and probably there's no one formula.
I want to add to what he
Yes,
said
sure.
with regards to he didn't know if the character will. So this is something true. There are times when I have written also. I sit with one idea in my mind and one ending, but once I start writing, it develops into a different thing. That also happens, yeah.
And I'd probably say that I'm like you. If I didn't have the full blueprint, I probably wouldn't write it. And I have to know what's going to happen before I can put it on paper.
So essentially, there are as many ways of writing a book as there are authors, probably. With that, though, I want to get into the part of writing that every writer, author I've spoken to has said has been a bit of a bump on the road, which is editing and rewriting. So on this, Anshu, Divya, Nitya, please chime in, but I'll start with Anshu. What has been your experience of editing a ready manuscript?
Yeah, so to give you some idea about the time and effort involved in editing, so I started working on this book I think in late 2014, and by 2016 I thought, okay, this is done. And I was very excited. I have a friend who's written 10 books. So I told her that, I'm done. She said, okay, let it sit for a few months and then come back to it. And I did that. So I had this whole stack of unread books. For 3 months I didn't open my iPad, I didn't write anything. I just read. So after 3 months, when I opened the book, the manuscript, there were these sentences that I'd been really proud of when I wrote them. like, sort of showy and fancy, and they didn't really fit in the context of the book. And there were these paragraphs where I thought I'd made some really great point, and they looked like wooden. I mean, they were like tripping up the reader as they progressed through the story. So I had to get rid of those. Initially, it was heartbreaking to, remove these sentences and these paragraphs that you crafted with so much love and attention. But yeah, after you start doing it once, then it. So again, to give you an example, so when I started editing, my manuscript would be the equivalent of what, 400 pages, and within about 2 months, it was down to something like 260. So all this stuff was gone. But the most difficult part of editing actually was, so in my book, the protagonist is a 15-year-old boy, and bad things happen to this boy, right? So as a 42-year-old man at that point in time, someone who has children, I was really angry that these bad things were happening to this boy. And that anger sort of flowed into the story, and that's good, that this sort of story should have anger. I mean, it should be an angry story. But when I read it, I saw that this was, the sort of wrathful anger of a grown-up that feels like, totally slaughtering the people who are doing bad things to this child. But if I had to be true to the point of view of the novel, which was the point of view of the 15-year-old, then I had to change the tone of the anger. I had to make it like, I had to make it the sort of powerless anger, sometimes indignation, sometimes confusion that a child would feel when faced with the same situation. And this was a sort of emotionally exhausting experience, and I was glad when it was over.
Very interesting. I'm sure a lot of you struggle with the idea of actually cutting down, but the one that you expressed about, I was a very smart writer and I wrote this sentence and there's a pun somewhere in there only really smart people will get. It makes no sense to the story, but I've put it there because I've made it. I'm sure that's the hardest one to cut down. Any stories to share here, Divya?
Yeah, I think when I started, I was saying I actually wrote it 2 to 3 times because of the feedback I kept getting on it. So that was painful because because I read a lot, I thought I had the perfect idea and I knew exactly what would work. And then I got taken down a peg or two multiple times, being told that no, this doesn't work yet. Think about it a little more. And that was still more from the perspective of just even getting it interesting enough for the publisher to accept it. But post that, when I was again writing it, I realized that that every time you look at it, it's like Angshu said, you take a break, you go back, you won't like half of what you wrote. And then I finally reached a point where I gave myself a self-imposed deadline. I said, you know what, this manuscript has to finish, right? At some point it has to be done. It can always be better and amazing and all of that, but I got it to a point where I was happy, and then I said, okay, now you got it done. But even then, I think right up until the minute I actually opened the inbox and sent out that manuscript, I was still skimming through saying, oh, let me change this, oh, let me change that. So I think you just can't stop from editing yourself, and if you keep doing it, you're probably going to reach that point where you also keep judging yourself, right? So you're holding yourself to this bar, then you're like, oh, this is not good enough, that's not good enough. And at some point you have to understand where it's good enough, you have to let it get out there, otherwise you're just going to have a manuscript that you're constantly re-editing and it's locked up in your house, and that's that.
So, we have come to the part where you guys now have a manuscript. I mean, no matter how many times you've edited it, it is ready in some form or shape. The biggest hurdle that I feel, and I'm sitting on 20 written short stories, and I've done nothing about it. From there to meeting publishers, to getting the product out in the market, what exactly is the process involved and how did you go about it? So, Anshu, what did you do from the manuscript to get a publisher interested?
Okay, so mine was a bit of a convoluted story. So I had just before I was ready with my manuscript, I had read a couple of really, really great books. Among them was M and the Big Home by Jerry Pinto. actually published by Speaking Tiger. And I thought, okay, this is a publisher that I fancy, let's say. And so, as luck would have it, a friend of mine had a book published by them, and I got an email address from him. So I sent in a manuscript, and I got a promptish reply. I mean, within, I think it was a week or 10 days, saying that we'll get back to you within a month. Sorry. But people in the know told me that no, 3 months is more reasonable. So yeah, expect something in 3 months. A month was bad enough, right? So after a month, by the end of a month, I was anyway completely antsy. I was, I was thinking, okay, so they hate it, they're going to throw it away. And just the moment the month was over, I sent a reminder saying that, okay, so you said you're going to get back in a month, whatever, ... And then I didn't receive a response. And that's when I began to freak out, really. So then 2 months passed, and 3, then 4. And I thought that, okay, so this is done, gone. I have to write I'm going to write a different story, and let's just forget this happened. And then what happened was, I was at a dinner where there was this person from Australia. I knew vaguely that she was in publishing, and I knew that she had written a book. And I thought, okay, and of course at this point I wasn't thinking that she was going to in any way help with publishing my book, because she lives in Australia, she works for a university. I live in India, my book is in an Indian context, I've never been to Australia in my life at that point. So like, that's not what I was thinking. What I was thinking is, okay, I want some validation. I want someone to either tell me, yeah, this is good stuff, or to tell me that, this is rubbish, you shouldn't bother. And so I got a chance to read a small passage to her. And after I did that, she gave me a business card, and on it said Director of University of Western Australia Publications. And I was like, okay. And then she said, send me the manuscript. So I sent her the manuscript. And at the end of 10 days, she says that, okay, we'd like to work with this manuscript, but you should know that there is a lot of hard work to be done. There are rough edges that need to be worked on, etc., etc. And yeah, so that's where that journey started. And it was an amazing journey, because there were developmental changes, in the sense that she said that, okay, your scenes are great, but they don't flow well together. You can't get from one scene to the other without really tripping up on a bunch of bad things. So yeah, so that was again, after the manuscript was accepted, it was about another year of hard work. And this was like real slog, because I knew that it was out there, it just had to, flow well. And yeah, so that happened. And then there was some other kind of stuff that happened. For example, there was a fact checker who said that, okay, in your book you say that in November something happens, and 2 weeks after that, this Air India aircraft is blown up. But you know what? This aircraft was blown up in July. So you're wrong. So you fix that. So that's the fact checking sort of thing. So all of that happened, and so all in all, from submitting the manuscript and it being on the shelves, it was more than a year actually.
Very interesting. So you have touched upon the emotional journey of manuscript gone to publisher, and now you're in the waiting. Talk to us, Divya, about that journey. And you have worked with a large publisher as well. I would love to hear from you. Did you ever feel that the suggestions you were getting, like developmental suggestions, like Angshu also mentioned, were they intrusive in any way? Like, did you feel that your creativity was being thwarted or rechanneled?
So I have to say upfront, no. And I think it's a factor. It's based on two things. One is that from the point that my book was accepted, because I had already done some rewrites on it earlier, I implicitly trusted my editor because she had gone that mile to make sure that it passed every check for it to even get accepted in the first place. So I didn't have any issues with it. So anything that came to me, unless I was very, very against it, I didn't really push back. There are certain things that I did say that, maybe not this or not that, but structurally, even when I was asked to change it, I did. But that again was a leap of faith because even before I wrote Dairy Cat, I had written a children's book, and when I written this children's book, I had sent it to a publisher who expressed interest and then gave me a bunch of things to change. And I was very happy at that point. I said, oh, they want me to change it, and they pretty much wanted me to rewrite the entire thing. I rewrote it and sent it off thinking this means it's going to get accepted. And then it got rejected, actually. And when it got rejected, I was like, wait, you actually made me rewrite something in full when you weren't even sure. And that was the first that I realized that in publishing it does happen. That the story could be interesting, they might want a few changes, and even after that, it's still possible that it doesn't fit what the publisher is looking for. And then I kind of shopped that around a little bit. It kept getting rejected. So when this happened with Dairy Cat, which I moved on to by that point, and when the first time the editor actually asked me to rewrite it, I said, you know what, I will rewrite it because I do want to see where this goes because it's Penguin and it's a big publishing house. And I personally grew up reading Penguin classics like everybody else, so why would I say no to that? But I also have this sense at the back of my mind that I'm going to do this, and there's still a good chance that it won't happen, it won't get accepted. And the way I rationalized it to myself at that point was like, you know what, if you're getting a Penguin editor to tell you how this book could work, even if ultimately they don't want it, somebody is going to want it. Like, it's who else is going to give you better feedback? So let's take it and see what happens. No, the only thing I think that I did was I have a friend who also been published and who gave me a very, very good piece of advice. He said, see, if someone's asking you to rewrite it, she might not actually need the full book rewritten. So, figure out what works. So the first time I pitched it to her when it was still in the format of rules, I said, let me write, say, half of it again. Let's see if it works. So that's what I did. Some of it worked, some of it didn't. So when I restructured it, the final version that actually got accepted, the way that I restructured it was, I restructured it for one location. So I basically picked up Bangkok. I did a full chapter on Bangkok with everything, with like the charts, with the tables, the whole jing bang. And I sent that out to her and said, tell me if this structure works. And it did. And once it did, then I wrote everything else later. So I think it's one of those things where there are parts of it that I think you'd want to fight for. In this case, because it was also non-fiction, I was open to kind of restructuring to a large extent. I thought through what would work best and reworked it. If it were fiction, I think it might have been a little different because in fiction there are points where you're like, I want this arc to be in a certain way. And there it gets a little harder. But having said that, even with fiction, when I've had editors give me feedback, there have been parts that I've wanted to take. And parts where I've been like, this is really going to weigh the story down. So I pick my battles. It's emotional, it's hard. My instant reaction for the most part, even with beta readers, is often, I start justifying. I look at a comment, I'm like, no, but you didn't understand. I didn't mean that. How could you not understand? And then I think you just have to step back and say, okay, let's think through it. Why did they say it? What did they see that I didn't see? And you have to kind of detach yourself. It's really hard. It's your baby, but then you have to detach yourself a little bit.
Perfect. One thing that a lot of new or aspiring writers struggle with is also the idea of putting themselves out there with their creation. So, when people ask me, so have you been published? I'm very apologetic in saying, yes, my story has appeared in 2 anthologies. There's hesitation. There's also an imposter syndrome in a lot of us saying, have we made it? Are we really there? So I want to understand, let's hear from Nitya, on how difficult is the process of self-promotion once the book is ready and out there?
You have to be ready for it because right now there are so many books out there in the market. There are so many authors coming every month, new authors. So marketing and self-promotion is very important, unfortunately. So I think for the extroverts, it might work very well because But for the introverts, I am kind of like an introvert. I was not feeling so great about it. So, but then I realized that it is important. It is very important and essential. You cannot hide in a burrow and expect people to read your work or something like that. You have to be there, out there, put yourself out there, and don't be apologetic about it, because it's your hard work. It's not something you stole from someone. You put your hours into it, you put your talent into it, and you wrote it. Some people might like it, some people might not like it. But you did your best. So this is what I am thinking. So this is what I tell myself. Yeah. So it is. Some people might find it difficult, but it is very, very essential. This is what I have to say about this.
No, even I would qualify myself as an extrovert, but I think it is slightly cultural also that in our part of the world, there's some amount of value judgment to self-promotion, isn't it? Like, we have not been told to promote ourselves as kids.
Yeah, it is a little, it makes me freak out really, this whole thing, because, for example, when I first got the invitation for this particular panel, my first reaction was, okay, no, I mean, is there any way I can politely decline without really making, But then I was told that, after all, you want people to read your book, right? And for me, it's doubly hard because when I finished writing the book, I had no Facebook account, I had no Instagram, I had none of this stuff. And then, so my publisher asked me, okay, what's your Facebook handle? I said, I don't have one, I closed it long ago. So I was able to reactivate it. And then I realized I have 70 friends, like 70, okay? And so when the book came out, I posted, so 10 people liked it. I said, okay, 10 people like it, that's okay. Yeah, it's still a mystery to me, this whole self-promotion thing. I really don't know what to do.
I think you just really have to push yourself, because I've had, I supposedly have an MBA in marketing, which means that I do get how to market. My husband has been in marketing all his life, so between the two of us we know all of the ways to market things, but even then, I actually went, so I thankfully didn't have defunct Facebook or Instagram. My Instagram was private, so I still have it as a private account. The public account I used for the book is what my husband had created because of his eating the bizarre food, and I just co-opted it and took it away, and he had to create another one for himself. I went back and started using Twitter again because I realized that I'm not on Twitter and maybe there are people discovering it there. So there's a bunch of things I did around marketing, but it's still really hard, and I find it really hard to tell people. I hadn't told anyone at work that I wrote a book, and I had a colleague on my team who found out completely accidentally, and she's a reader, so she went nuts. And she's like, you wrote a book and you didn't tell us. And then the next thing I knew straight away is I know there are some communities that actually give writers feedback. I personally haven't used them, but I have heard of them mentioned in other Litfests and so on, where people have talked about communities where you can actually go put your work out there and people will give you feedback. The other way is that if you have trusted friends, family members who are willing to read. By the way, my entire family is vegetarian, and there were still 5 or 6 people between my friends and family who stepped up and said, we'll read it and give you feedback. And they did. So I think if you have folks that you can trust, send it out to them and they'll give you good feedback, especially if they're people who read the genre. That's probably what you're looking for.
The issue here is that what do you say about these groups where we can put our work is more about fiction. Non-fiction, we rarely find books where they read the entire thing and give feedback. Okay, second thing is finding friends. This kind of big, huge books, I don't know, I don't have personally anyone who will read the entire thing and give it. I think my book
I want to add to what she said. There are also literary agencies that do this sort of work.
Submitted direct to the agency.
Yeah, you can Google them, you'll find them.
Yeah, I do have.
Yeah, so they'll edit it also for you, and
Okay.
I think they'll give you feedback also.
Okay.
Other questions, please.
Hello. First of all, thank you so much for being candid about something as such as self-doubt, which we all go through. Apart from that, my question was, especially at a very young age, we are not sure of our art ourselves, right? We are exploring. And personally for me, putting my art out there is a very major position of vulnerability. So how do you think you all have changed, or what did you do as functional steps that people could take to, be more sure of themselves or their art, assertive of them?
The first thing is find a few people you trust and a few people who will be able to give you reasonable feedback about the art itself, like whatever it is that you do. So the most difficult thing to do is to give it to the first person, right? So after you've done that, it's a little more difficult to give it to 3 and then 5. But I think about 10 is the top. I mean, if you are able to give it to 10 people, and then I think you'll be less scared of putting it out there. But yeah, start with 1 or 2 that you really trust, I think.
See, I understand your point. Like, the confidence will not be there because I think we are more scared of criticism, right? Yeah. So yeah. So the thing is, I've gone through that. Okay. I wrote a book 10 years back. It's still not published. It's still lying there. So the thing is, after 10 years, with maturity, I understood that even the book can be changed. And another thing that I understood along with it is that if you wait to get approval from others, you will never get anywhere. So first of all, this is something very hard to digest and to imbibe inside you. But if you can do it, that's the best thing you can do. Don't wait for approvals and don't wait for people to tell you to go and publish it. You should have confidence in your work. Okay, so you should find the right communities to give your work, who can criticize you, take the criticism positively. There are so many people who criticized me, but if I was to sit over there and get discouraged by it, I wouldn't have published a book. Okay, so this is what I have to say from my side. People who have to criticize will keep criticizing. You have to have the confidence to get your book published, get it edited, get it published.
I think I just have one thing to add. Especially with rejection, I think a lot of people also kind of worry about rejection. Like I was saying earlier, my children's book got rejected not once, not twice, but over 3 times. I gave up on it, but in the middle of that, right, on one side, one was getting rejected. On the other side, the other book was actually going forward. And I still, by the way, really believed in that children's book. So eventually what I did is, after Dairy Pack got accepted, I did go back and share it with my Penguin editor. Though she has nothing to do with children's books, I still shared it with her. I said, take a look at this story. And she liked it and she recommended it to a colleague in Puffin. And that book is actually coming out this year. So I don't think you should take any of that seriously. Like, just because one person doesn't like it, it may not be a fit. Like, one publisher not liking a book is because it doesn't fit their list. Because they look for lists, they have a certain thing they're looking to publish. It doesn't fit, doesn't mean it won't fit for someone else.
I also just want to add as a functional step, like you said, what has worked for me is contests like Write India, where you quickly get a sense of if whether people are even liking they're reading your stories. And it was a shock to me. I had just sent it in because I had taken a break from work and was sitting at home at the time, and I just sent in one of my writings just to see how the world reacts to it. And the day the results came, I didn't know that 3 other people called me and said, listen, you won. And just the shock that Sir Jeffrey Archer read my story was enough for me. Like, okay, he gave time to read my story, must mean that I'm doing something well, right? So participating in some of these contests would definitely elevate and pull down your inhibition a bit. It did that for me. Quickly, one more, yes, there are questions right there.
A very good evening to one and all. My question is a general one and any one of you can answer it. What advice do you have for an aspiring author? How can a person write a book, finish it, find a publisher, get it published and open the book to the international community? Are there any platforms to it?
I think it's just you have to keep at it. I don't know if there's a platform for you to publish your work, but...
How to find a publisher? That's
okay. So to find the publisher, I think the conventional way, if you were to actually go and figure out which publisher works for your book, One way to do it is to actually look at what that publisher has been publishing. So there are a few big publishing houses, there are smaller ones. Look at what they've published in the recent past. You'll figure out what they want. Within that, actually, a lot of editors are also pretty active on social media and other places. So even within the publishing house, you could potentially figure out who's looking for what kind of stuff. And that way you can find out and reach out to the people. The biggest advice I would have is do not reach out to someone. Say if someone's primarily publishing romantic fiction, if you go and give them a crime novel, they're not going to take it. So you also have to find that. And other than that, like, if you keep attending Litfest and so on, there are a lot of platforms that come up. So Dairy that actually was pitched at a literature festival. They had a contest for pitching to publishers. And that's why it actually got pitched. And that's why I first even discovered that that idea was worth considering. And while my eventual publisher wasn't at that festival, it helped me network, find people who are able to talk about it and so on. So I think a lot of these platforms help. Use those, do the cold calling. Even though I got interest from publishers, I also did go and portray that on an agent website. The agent got back to me much later than a publisher, so they lost out on that, I would say. But agents also help. So I think all of these venues exist for you to see what's the right fit. It's just that you have to get really thick-skinned with rejection, because a lot of times it's either rejection or just the wait. Like Angshu was saying earlier, 3 months, 4 months, nobody's gotten back to you. I think what helped me in that place was, again, because I have a day job, typically my thing is, if I've sent an email and you've not replied in about 3 weeks, I'm going to write to you again and shame you into responding eventually. So that also works.
Good evening. My question is, how important do you think social media presence is for debut authors? Today you have bookstagrammers, book influencers. So do you think being on social media and having followers and connecting with readers through bookstagrams, does it actually help you to sell your work?
I think only to an extent. It is also essential, I feel, but that is not the thing, I feel. Because at the end of the day, when they read your book, the book should also be good. And other marketing activities also are important. Just social media is very important. I wouldn't take that away. Even that is very important. If you guys have to add something.
So I think for me, I don't think your personal social media is probably as important, or maybe it is. I personally don't have that many followers, so I can't say if that would really work. But I think there are certain book reviewers who do have a lot of followers. So again, with that, it's similar to publishers. Find the ones who are talking about books like you. So I did like this thing where I went around looking for all of the top book reviewers, wrote to a lot of them personally saying, my book is coming out, would you be interested in reviewing this, and so on. And some of them flat out turned around and told me, you know what, I don't read the genre. So it is important even there to go and look and see which genre they read. I've seen that certain people, when they've posted on Instagram and done a bookstagram about the book, it has led to other people commenting, asking questions, and it does have some impact, I think, on potentially just discovering, right? Because otherwise, how do people even know you've written a book? Nobody knows who I am. They're not going to know I wrote a book. So from that aspect, I think it's important. I did try building some social following before the book came out, but I don't think I did enough. I think with marketing, there's always going to be this thing where if you really step back and look at it, you'll say, I could have done that much more, but hey, you are writing the book, you also have to market it. It's a lot to get done, and some of us have day jobs, so I think there's also that. So it gets a little harder.
Well, anything to add, Angshu?
I don't know really, because I have not even been able to send this, the Amazon link for my book to all my friends on Facebook, because I don't know whether they'll like it, right? So all I'm hoping is that somebody reads it and likes it and tells one more person, and they tell another person. That's all I'm hoping, and I think that's also another kind of social networking, right? Word of mouth, the oldest kind.
Well, it has been an exciting evening for me. Wonderful to hear from all of you. And like somebody from the audience said, thank you for being vulnerable. Thank you for sharing with us exactly how it feels like to be an author. Congratulations again on your books. We are excited. We want to read it. If you guys want to grab your copies, they're there. Just grab your copy. They're around you are all around
I'm
tomorrow.
around tomorrow and
Yeah.
right now.
So you can catch them tomorrow as well if you are around. You have been a brilliant audience. Thank you for the questions, and thank you for taking time to listen to us.